Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric on our continuing series Dreamcast Dreamland, where I take a look at some of my favorite Dreamcast games of all time. And today we've got a random bonus episode, and that is Rainbow Cotton. And the reason I'm covering this is because recently it was finally translated into English, and as you can see here with that anime cutscene, we have English subtitles. I will leave a link in the description below to the article describing how this was made and the creators, and I'm pretty sure you can find a copy of the game there as well if you look hard enough. Before you get too far involved, if you do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But I've definitely played Rainbow Cotton before, but it's absolutely spectacular that we now have a full English translation of the game, because a lot of the charm in this game is the story. The Cotton series has always been colorful and childlike in nature, but now that we actually know what's happening in this game, it makes the game even that much more fun, and I always want to highlight and celebrate when these sort of things happen. If it's not for fan translations, a lot of games, not just on the Dreamcast but otherwise, would never be enjoyed by as wide of an audience. And obviously, as you can tell from the gameplay, playing Rainbow Cotton is not difficult if you can't understand what's being said. But missing out on that story is a bummer, and now we're finally able to really figure out what is going on in this game. I actually thought about including this on the original playlist, but I didn't do it, and that's for one very specific reason. While it's a really fun game to play, mechanically it takes a lot of getting used to because your character auto-centers on the screen. The minute you let go of the analog stick, she is going to move back to the center, and obviously her character model is relatively large. If you ever played Kid Icarus on the 3DS, you're going to understand how this game works, but mechanically it's just a little bit different, where it does take a lot of learning curve to really get into the game. But once you understand it and figure it out, you're going to have a ton of fun, and I absolutely love the character designs, those flying eyeballs with the wings, definite Kid Icarus inspiration territory there. And now we have a gigantic pumpkin coming out of the water. It's more of like a bright and colorful version of Death Smiles, not mechanically but just in the aesthetic nature, but it's one of those games that feels like it could only be done on Dreamcast, because Dreamcast is always just playing around with these sort of weird, colorful, and otherwise strange games. And that's why the Dreamcast will always hold a special place in my heart, because in the PlayStation 1 era, I probably just played and purchased games that were the mainstream stuff, the things that you would think about when you thought of PlayStation 1. But when the Dreamcast came around, I read different online articles about games that were coming from Japan, and I started importing things that I had never experienced before, and that's why I always loved the Dreamcast, because it was kind of my gateway into those more obscure titles. I mean, if you've ever played the Panzer Dragoon series, you're going to understand Rainbow Cotton pretty quickly, but it really does feel the most close to Kid Icarus on the 3DS, and that game was another game that was criticized for its control scheme and handling, and I would say Rainbow Cotton has the same issues, but I promise you, if you spend more than 10 minutes with this title, you will wrap your head around the control scheme. It does feel slightly unnatural at first, but that's just because you need to train your brain into doing something different. Once you've gotten the muscle memory, it works perfectly. But what I love so much, and the reason I'm doing this video, is that there's so many great things happening with Dreamcast in the last year or so. We got all the Atomic Wave ports, we've gotten new betas, Castlevania Resurrection, Agartha, and now we have Rainbow Cotton with full English subtitles. And I've always been curious, and I have played this game before, what exactly the story was. It wasn't essential to the enjoyment of the game, but of course I was always curious what was going on in the cutscenes. And the translation's great, the way it's been incorporated in. It is seamless. You would expect this to have come out in English and been a retail release, but in fact it is just a fan translation. And Dreamcast has been having such a great resurgence lately. I mean, it never went anywhere, but there's so many things happening. It seems like every time I turn around and think there's nothing left to talk about for Dreamcast, 2 or 3 more things come up and people ask me if I'm going to make a video on them. And I just love the boss battles in this game too. That giant frog flying around, he has huge eyes. It's just the type of game that makes you smile. It's so colorful, it's so unique, it's got a great soundtrack. Any of the small issues, and those are just the mechanical handling of the controls, can really be overlooked, because it's the type of game that you don't get a chance to play very often, and it's one, if you're a Dreamcast fan, I highly recommend you checking out. The nice thing is, Dreamcast emulates perfectly, so if you do want to play this and you don't own a Dreamcast, it is 100% doable. I just popped the GDI in my GDEMU and put this on. It was playing extremely quickly, and you'll see now that we beat the boss, the game gives you little mixed things to do at the end of the stage. You get tea time, and tea is a big component of the story of this game, but you need to float around and try to collect these tea capsules for lack of a better term, and it can be hard with the perspective, but you get better at it. But I mentioned the whole thing has been translated, so go ahead and watch one of the cutscenes. It is quite good, and I'll come back and tell you more about why you should play Rainbow Cotton. But enjoy.
町を助けてくださってありがとうございます。逃げ遅れて困ってたんです。何もお礼はできませんが、このスタンプラリーカードを差し上げます。ラシャ城を囲む4つの町にあるスタンプをすべて揃えるとラシャ城に入ることができます。ってことは全部の町を回らなければラシャ城には入れないの？そういうことになります。はい、どうぞ。それじゃあ、そういうことだから次行きましょう。次ね。
It's just a fun and quirky and weird story, and now that we can understand what's going on in English, it is even better. But I mentioned earlier just how good the soundtrack to this game is, so I know I just gave you guys a 30-second break to watch a cutscene, but you have to hear the soundtrack because it really does make the game. It marries together perfectly with the colorful and cartoony visuals. So enjoy the soundtrack for 30 to 45 seconds, and I'll come back and convince you why you should still play Rainbow Cotton, because you probably haven't. But enjoy, and I'll be right back. 'That cheery, jazzy soundtrack just marries perfectly to the colorful and cartoony visuals to really make this game the total package, in my opinion, outside of the small control issues. But I love that I even have the chance to talk about this in the first place, because that means Dreamcast got another new cool thing for it. Dreamcast still is and probably always will remain my favorite 3D console of all time, and the fact that I had to make another spur-of-the-moment video because something cool happened makes me happy, because that means Dreamcast is just getting more and more love. We got Castlevania Resurrection released, there was new betas of Agartha, all the Atomic Wave games came over to Dreamcast. Dreamcast has been getting so much press and so many new things lately that it's a spectacular time to be a fan. And if you've never played a Dreamcast before, I'm assuming you have because you watched my channel, but if you've never checked out some of these more random games, I can't recommend it enough, because the Dreamcast has got a relatively deep library and there's a ton of fun to be had. But short of that, that's Rainbow Cotton. It's amazing that we get to play it in English. It's a super fun game. And where else do you get to fight pig balloons shooting pig missiles? Like I mentioned earlier, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification will definitely help us out. And leave me a comment down below. Have you played Rainbow Cotton, and what do you think? Short of that, I hope something new happens for Dreamcast, so I have to turn around and make another video. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.